to Lost Tribe and BBYO for giving this platform for us to talk about a passion of mine, which is gaming. I am a gamer myself. I've worked in the game industry now for over 15 years, and I'm also a parent of gamers. So the thoughts that I'll share with you tonight are really trying to blend all those different perspectives. I really wanted to hit, number one, just a little bit about the gaming industry. Like, what is it? Why is it so popular? Is it important or not as a phenomenon? So we'll talk a little bit about that. And then I wanted to hit some of the most common concerns that I hear, many of which are actually opportunities in my mind. When I was growing up, there was certainly a bit of a stigma around video games. I think that it was thought of kind of like junk food, something that is fine in moderation, but it's kind of a temptation that is more bad than good. Most of the adult population today, and based on a lot of research, actually frames it quite differently. They frame it more as a problem-solving activity that's approached with a playful attitude, a little bit more like protein powder for your brain than junk food. Now, can you have too much protein powder? Yep, you certainly could. But when used correctly, it's something that helps with physical training. And in my experience, games, when delivered correctly, can help with a lot of different training, and we're going to hit some of those today. There's a perception that it's mainly a kid activity, and that's not true. The average age of a game player is actually 35 years old, and 72% of players are 18 years or older. It's about 65% of the US adult population play games of one form or another. As an industry, gaming is really massive. You basically have to take the movie industry and the film industry and put those two together to approach the size of gaming. It is by far globally the biggest entertainment media that we have. It's not just kids playing games, but also watching other people play games, YouTubers, or on platforms like Twitch TV. So I like to break down, what it is that makes games so attractive, because that's part of how we can harness them for positive outcomes. There's really 4 key elements that distinguish a game from other activities like watching a movie or reading a book or other sorts of entertainment. The first one is that in gaming, it's all about giving the player control. That really is what distinguishes something like a movie, which is passive, where you're watching the protagonist. You might be empathizing with the protagonist, but in gaming, you are the protagonist. So gaming at its core is actually about agency. Number 2, when it comes to game design, is giving the players very clear goals and incremental levels of difficulty. Another reason that makes games so sticky, if you think about your own experience, when you have a challenge and it's not too hard but not too easy and you accomplish it, and then you get another challenge just a little harder, that's very rewarding. Which leads us to the third element of gaming, which is providing instant ongoing feedback to the player. As soon as they accomplish a goal, they are rewarded with something shiny, and that feels very, very good. These core elements are actually the same elements that go into designing good educational content, because they present challenges to students, and when students master them, they're presented with another challenge just a little bit out of their grasp, which leads to skill development and mastery. The fourth element that gaming has, now that we have an internet and this is an online world, is the aspect of creating community. Because the stereotype of gaming being a solitary activity, it couldn't be more opposite. Games are generally played online. Even a single player game, oftentimes the player will seek out allies online to get through a particularly hard part of the game. There's a lot of collaboration and community, and really that's at the heart of gaming. You as parents have just a tremendous opportunity to harness games for positive change. And I also want to be candid about some of the risks or perceived risks around gaming. When I have my son consider, is he going to do cross country or is he going to do football? I want to know the pros and cons, and I, as a parent, might not be comfortable with the decision to have him play football. There might be too many risks versus positives. Same when I send him to a physical summer camp. There might be some risks, but there's probably a lot more opportunities for positive outcome. So that's kind of how I'm framing these elements when it comes to gaming for you as a parent. So number one opportunity with gaming is simply opening the lines of communication in the home about gaming. For some parents who are not familiar with the game universe or technology, it can be a little intimidating. They feel like the kid knows a lot more than they do, and they just might not engage. But I would encourage you, particularly if you have younger children, to engage on this topic. I know households that were comfortable talking about having the sex talk, but they haven't had a tech talk. And when your kid is engaging with technology and online, this is a great opportunity to train them well, because the same healthy habits they learn for a game can be applied in the online world in general. This is very likely a passion point for your kid. So in the same way you'd be excited if he brings home a ribbon in debate or makes it to state in a traditional sport, you should be inquiring, ideally, an opportunity for him to open up and brag and talk about his journeys, successes and failures with gaming. And at the end of the day, if you're leading with a genuine curiosity about the space, we see that has positive outcomes. If you have a young child, the best way for you to ensure safety for that kid online is just having that open dialogue where if he or she ever sees something uncomfortable, be it gaming or on social media or browsing, they're able to come with you. That's what correlates with success. Secondly, I want to talk a little bit about just content. First, you should be aware that there's a rating system for games, just like movies. Every household is going to make different decisions there, but those game ratings are quite good in terms of setting some initial expectation around what's inside the box. Now, know that when you leave the world of the box and you go online, you're going to be interacting with other people, and that's where that dialogue is important. The third point related to participating online, and I talked a little bit about this regarding open communication, but when your child is going from single player to interacting with other people, this is an opportunity to have them be trained as a digital citizen. Many schools now offer courses in digital citizenship, which at the end of the day is just a way of being and thinking and acting online. And there's a lot of great lessons there. The number one is being safe with your personal information, not giving out age or address, certainly, or phone number. And this is a chance to train them. None of this is specific to games. It's the online world, but games becomes a great vehicle to impart these lessons. There's often, again, a stereotype or stigma or question around violence depicted in video games and any correlation with real-world violence. And it was literally in March of this year, the American Psychology Association did a meta-analysis of all the studies out there. And they basically reaffirmed their previous position that was issued in 2015, that there's no evidence of gaming producing violent behavior, which is really recognize the personal development and skill development opportunities associated with gaming. To me, probably the easiest way to categorize this is just think of your kid playing chess. Chess, for whatever reason, is thought of as an intellectual sport where video games have somewhat of a stigma. but most of these games are as complex, and some of them are more complex than chess. Could your kid be playing too much chess? Perhaps, but in general, that's a protein powder for the brain. There's probably 4 things to think about. Socialization, the fact that very real friendships are made in the virtual world, and very real sportsmanship type lessons are learned. How to be, a good winner, right, and not a sore loser. Independence and confidence. You're going into a world that have other people. They're making certain decisions in the game, and you might make different decisions. Goal setting, deliberate practice, and mastery. Again, if you go back to those elements of a game, the reason these games are so sticky is because if you work hard and put in effort and achieve the goal, you're generally presented with a harder goal. And so that positive feedback loop of setting a goal and checking it off and going to the next one, that's what games do so well. That's actually what produces a little bit of dopamine in the user and has them feel good and come back for more. And that's a very powerful training mechanism that can be applied to anything in the real world. Balance, just balance and making good choices. Some households decide to implement screen limits, but in other households, including in our personal household, we always emphasize balance. We emphasize that, yes, gaming is a positive thing, but I don't want you playing chess all the time. I don't want you playing piano all the time. It's in that same category. As long as the grades are maintained, and in our household, as long as there is some other physical activity, then gaming could fill in the remainder of the time. And we saw very positive outcomes in our particular case there. The 5th area that I want to hit is around career exploration. So I mentioned this is just a massive industry that is only now being born. Games and esports, this esports industry is only about 3 years old. And in many ways, it's come as far as traditional sports took about 100 years to get to. And a lot of the skills around programming, around art and digital art, around production skills, using cameras, or even doing commentary. There's a lot of career opportunities there. And games and esports give a very safe place to test those out. Another opportunity for kids is learning time management in general. And there's 2 sides to this. There's something for the parents and there's something for the adults. The parents need to realize that these online games do not have a pause button in them. So when it is time for dinner, if you have not given any warning to your kid and you're just like, oh, just stop that thing, pause that thing, it's time to eat, turn it off. If they're in an online game, they can't really just leave without abandoning their team. It is literally like pulling them off of the middle of the basketball court, right in the middle of the game, and they're leaving their team hanging, right? It's not good digital citizenship. So be aware that those are the dynamics of the game. It's not something you can just pause. That's the message for the parents. The message for the kids is that, of course, if they know that dinner is at 6 o'clock, or they've been given enough time to know that that's coming, they shouldn't start a game, particularly if they're aware that that game is going to take 20 minutes. They shouldn't start a game 15 minutes before dinner. So, but that's one of the biggest misperceptions that I see if the parents don't play games, is they just assume the kid is being disobedient or not respectful because they won't come immediately to something if they didn't have any warning. And they're literally in the middle of a competitive team activity that matters a lot to everyone involved. Matters just as much as your, weekend softball game or probably more. So. The reality is that gaming is enjoyed by women almost as much as males. It's actually 46% of game players are females, but the genres do vary a fair bit as a generalization. In the same way, action movies are a little more popular with males. You will see some of those patterns by gender in gaming as well, even though gaming is very well represented with females. So I would encourage women to definitely be participating. If you have a friend to play with, that is probably ideal, if only because if you have a bad experience, which it will happen from time to time, whether you're male or female, people might just be jerks online from time to time. You've got kind of an ally there that's going through the situation with you. And of course, again, keep that open dialogue with your parents. Thanks everybody for your attention. Sorry this wasn't more interactive, but with the number of attendees, that can be a little bit tough. I will just leave with BBYO and Lost Tribe a couple resources that I mentioned, a video that we actually made around just helping kids understand how to break into the industry, and maybe some of those studies kind of around positives and negatives, if that's helpful for you guys. Feel free certainly to hit myself up after this if there's other topics. I'm pretty active on the platforms LinkedIn and also on Twitter at Todd Allen Harris. So at the end of the day, what our company does is try to help use video games to deliver positive impact, to people and to society. And we got a lot of cases of that, and having educated parents is a big part of making more of that happen.